Okay, let's dive in. We're starting with this really powerful image, Scheherazade.
Right, telling stories night after night.
Exactly, for 1,001 nights, nearly 3 years, just to survive. And the source material we're looking at, it kicks off right there in the prologue, this whole idea of searching for the story that will save our lives.
Yeah, and what's interesting is this isn't some ancient myth. It's a memoir. It's one woman's very personal, pretty unconventional story, all from her perspective.
Totally. And this deep dive is happening because you, our listener, brought this source to us. So what we want to do is explore everything she lays out. I mean, seeking escape, figuring out who she is in some really unexpected
Like
places.
a royal harem, which is just, wow.
Right. And then dealing with really tough choices, complicated relationships, and finally trying to find her own voice, her own story.
It really jumps between these two extremes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like unbelievable, extraordinary circumstances, unimaginable wealth, strange power stuff, and then this really deeply human thing, just trying to figure out identity, where you belong, how to survive.
So let's start where her journey begins. The source gives us a good picture of her early life. She was adopted, named Mariah first, then Jill Lauren. Adoptive parents' mom was a social worker, dad a stockbroker.
And they lived in this specific kind of like affluent suburb. She makes this point pretty sharp that orthodontia was mandatory.
Yeah, and a nose job. Highly recommended. Ooh.
Tells you a lot right there, doesn't it? But the pressures. The source also talks about her relationship with her dad early on, always trying to impress him.
Even like cheating or faking things, waiting on the steps for him, seems like she really needed his approval.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And alongside that trying, there's this feeling of wanting something
Mm.
more, something else. She
Yeah,
talks
right.
about watching ballerinas.
And thinking she understood why her birth mother gave her up, saying you had to lose something to be that light.
Wow. Lose something to be that light. That's heavy for a kid. It suggests early on this idea that change, maybe getting free, comes with a price, like you have to let go. Kind of foreshadows a lot, actually.
So she leaves that world, leaves NYU, moves downtown, Lower East Side, and she gets this philosophy guided by Patti Smith.
Ah, yes, the Patti
Yeah.
Smith question.
Right. Always asking, what would Patti Smith do? That's her test for the authentic choice, the balls out choice, as she puts it.
And that's such a key thing throughout the whole memoir, isn't it?
Oh?
It's her personal measure for what feels real, pushing her into stuff that might be messy or hard, but feels authentic compared to what she left behind.
And it leads to some weird stuff pretty fast. She gets a part in this trashy vampire movie.
The audition sounds wild.
Totally. Take your top off, scream, boom, victim one.
And the filming, even weirder. The director yelling like, "Fighter!" Then ecstatic, orgasmic.
With fake blood, she calls it Coro syrup ice flow. Amazing phrase. But then the movie comes out. It's blurry. She's barely in it. Total letdown.
But the takeaway she gets is huge.
Yeah. At the end of all of these surreal and pointless nights, there was always the story.
That's it. That's a core thing she finds early. Even if the experience feels like nothing, the story you make out of it, that's what lasts. That's the value you pull from the wreckage, kind of.
So this hunt for the story, the authentic thing, even if it's weird, leads her towards sex work. She was at the Wooster Group, but felt like she was just licking fundraising envelopes.
Creative dead end.
Yeah. Then she meets Taylor, who mentions an escort agency, the Crown Club, and Jill has this immediate fantasy about the boss, Diane,
Right, picturing this, like, elegant woman in a cream-colored pantsuit.
with a secret maternal side, like Candace Bergen in Mayflower Madam.
Classic move, right. Trying to make something potentially risky fit into this neat, acceptable image. But she hesitates at first, calls it one step too far.
And this is how the memoir shows these little things matter. She takes the card anyway, just in case I change my mind.
And isn't that how it often happens? These seemingly tiny choices. Taking a card just in case. You might even recognize that in your own life, those little decisions that end up changing everything.
Totally. Not these big dramatic moments always.
Yeah, the big forks in the road often look like just small turns at the time.
So keeping that card, that small thing, leads right to the next big step. It's Thanksgiving, 1991. She's feeling really down, pulls out the card, calls the Crown Club.
The source describes it as doing something you never dreamed of. But it happens in little bits. A tiny step over the line, and then you advance to the next line.
And why does she call? She lists all these reasons like Loneliness, being broke, depressed, curious.
Or maybe the biggest one?
Yeah, the feeling of sitting on the couch at your parents' house and slowly suffocating. Calling the club felt like poking a hole in the bag trying to breathe.
And that suffocation feeling makes so much sense when you hear about that actual Thanksgiving visit. She's there with her boyfriend, Sean, describes the house as this gray, bi-level 1970s house, a proud monument to the status quo.
And her dad is visibly sick. She says he was thinner than I'd ever seen him, damp with cool sweat. Clearly unwell. It adds to that heavy feeling.
Yeah, and the memoir is unflinching about the family stuff. It mentions a difficult dynamic, her father preferring her over her brother, Johnny. And it describes this awful incident of abuse.
Hand on her throat, slamming her head against the wall.
And she notes the words were worse than the hitting. Her mother begging him to stop. Enough, please, enough. That background really underlines why she felt so desperate to escape, to find another reality.
Gives that suffocation real weight. So, okay, she made the call. Visits the Crown Club office. And it's not glamorous at all. Monochrome vanilla. Sterile.
And Diane, the owner, the total opposite of the Candice Bergen fantasy, described as pugnacious and brusque, assessing her.
Like the merchandise I was destined to become. Chilling. Diane just rattles off her description. Hair. Auburn. 36, 24, 30. 9. Might as well play up the big ass. Winona Ryder.
Wow. And checks the we'll do whatever box. Ticks off fantasies, nurse fancies, dominatrix, girl on girl.
So while Diane's doing this cold assessment, inside, Jill's head is exploding. This cascade of anxieties.
Yeah, what if I got a disease? What if it was disgusting? What if I got raped, got killed? What if this next step would create a fissure? That split between the outside packaging and the inside fear is intense.
But despite the fear, bam, she gets a call her first night. Told she's lucky. She kicks the name Elizabeth.
Why Elizabeth?
Just because it sounded real, like names from childhood games. And immediately she knows she has to lie. Big time.
Yeah, hardcore lying would definitely be called for.
Yeah.
Tell Sean she's doing night temps. Easier to believe than waitressing, maybe.
The first date itself, gray walls, red bed, mirrored closets. The client's a radio host. His request is specific. Hands and knees, face the wall. He had an aversion to further skin-on-skin contact.
And poppers were involved. Brush.
Yeah. And she describes this physical shock, a chill shot up the back of my legs, like being caught. But then the practical bit, she makes $30, enough for tuition.
Just enough.
And leaving, walking out into this unusually early snow flurry, she just feels like she's moving. It's this weird mix, right? Fear, practicality, but also this strong sense of momentum, escaping the suffocation.
That first experience, the bizarre, the scary, the practical, it really sets the stage for even more, well, extraordinary things to come.
Definitely. So fast forward maybe a month after she started with the Crown Club. She meets this woman, Ari, Arabelle Leon, at the Wits. Ari looks like Gidget, apparently. Whole milk white smile. Makes the offer seem kind of dubious to Jill.
And the offer is a job in Brunei. The description sounds really vague, though. Yeah. Maturity and respect for other cultures being easy for her employer to get along.
Right. Super generic. She gets picked along with another girl, Destiny, who has fingerless gloves and this whole backstory. But Taylor, her friend, doesn't get picked.
Creates some tension there.
Yeah, Jill feels bad, says her friendship with Taylor was contingent on the power imbalance. Didn't want to lose the one person on my side of the wall, you know?
Understandable. And the prep for this trip is just surreal. She goes to a botanica with her friend Penny for protection.
Seriously, like spiritual protection for this mystery job involving potentially meeting royalty.
Apparently. Shows how out there this all felt. The travel itself is nuts. LA layover, Singapore, then finally Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei's capital. She's dreading traveling with Destiny.
But that changes.
Yeah, it flips from repulsion to loyalty. The people just stare at them constantly in the airport. She says, the corridor became a catwalk.
So what does she do?
She pulls out the Patti Smith measure again. What would Patti Smith do? She would stare right back with a look that said, I see you. I see you too, motherfucker.
Using defiance as armor.
Totally. And she learns more about Destiny, who's way more complex than she seemed. Makes clothes, does acrylics, power lifts, pose for Hustler, loves Jesus, does collage art.
Wow, quite a mix.
And left a 5-year-old daughter back home. Jill just reflects, you do what you have to do, right?
Yeah, that hits hard. That survival instinct.
They get to Singapore totally wiped. Jill's seeing halos. Her tongue and brain had both grown a coat of fur. Serena, another girl with them, just casually drops that the royal family owns the hotel. The whole 63rd floor is for their guests.
Whoa. First real glimpse of the scale of this wealth. And then the palace. She compares it to Hearst Castle, gold domes, marble stairs. Ari makes them see the entrance hall.
Calls it a cavernous cathedral of a room with a fountain.
And Serena points out everything's real. Real gold on the carpet, real ruby in a tiger statue, a real Picasso, a real Degas ballerina.
Degas ballerina.
Yeah.
That connects back for Jill, right?
Yeah, deeply. She loved seeing one with her dad at the Met when she was a kid. And even in this insane, opulent place, she feels this overwhelming compulsion to touch its feet later. That memory just cuts right through all the strangeness.
Incredible how personal history just anchors you, even somewhere totally alien.
So they go into this party room. It's full of beautiful women just lounging around, these crazy silver and gold tiger statues in the feeding areas.
And she says the Asian girls decorated each area, themselves looking like tigers draped over the rocks. What an image.
The whole room is rich colors, deep blue, jade green. They meet Madge, the British woman running things. Jill calls her the Brunei equivalent of Julie, the cruise director from the Love Boat, always on her phone or walkie-talkie.
Huh. And alcohol flows freely, even though it's banned publicly in Brunei.
Right. And Jill immediately feels watched, judged by the other women, hears foreign words floating around, feels like an outsider. And the soundtrack to all this, cheesy synth pop karaoke.
The mix is just bizarre, isn't it? Extreme wealth, strict rules, weird details like the karaoke. And the rules become clear fast. They're told, don't have your head higher than Robin's. If you have to cross in front of him while he's sitting, bow.
Robin being the prince, she watches everyone bowing, then does it herself. Walking with a little shuffle and bending at the waist. Feels silly, wants to giggle.
But she feels his eyes on her, flushes, that mix of awkwardness and the power dynamic.
And there's this intense competition among the Western girls for his attention. She notes the Asian girls didn't seem to care too much. There's a whole hierarchy based on fame, how well you speak English, where you sit.
And when the disco starts, girls dance, men watch. Simple as that.
In this weird environment, she starts forming some key relationships. Meets Fiona, Serena's archenemy, but becomes Jill's closest ally. Fiona's confident, used to be a TV actress in the Philippines.
Robin chased her hard, apparently. She walked out on him initially.
And his response, diamonds. A cougar necklace. Fiona gives Jill some pretty blunt advice.
Yeah, that line, are you here to make friends? The money is your only friend. Ouch.
But probably crucial advice in that place. Challenges Jill's hope for real connection there.
But there's Ben, Robin's friend, bodyguard. Has moonscape skin. The other American girls are scared of him.
But Jill sees him differently.
Yeah, she thinks choose the monster versus Playboy. Believes monsters treat you better, maybe. Finds she can actually talk to him. He seems less cruel, less manipulative, even more impressed by her than Robin is. She sees him as maybe herself, turned inside out. Like they share something, being outsiders to the gloss. A different kind of connection.
But the source definitely doesn't paint it all as just weird connections and parties. There's a dark side, constant low-level cruelty between some girls. Serena especially targets Jill.
Sending back her food, leaving her out, spreading rumors about smelling bad, having herpes, being drunk, bulimic, vicious stuff.
And it's all happening under this omnipresent surveillance, this feeling of powers that lurk, knowing there's a camera behind every mirror.
Private chats get played back for the prince. Serena is apparently a pro at snitching. Leads to this intense paranoia, never feeling alone. Like a pea under the mattress, he says.
And it really gets to her. Physically, mentally, she gains weight, stops doing things, falls into depression.
Yeah.
Feels like a cannonball had come sailing out of the sky.
And she blames herself. Calls herself weak-willed, lazy, self-indulgent.
Yeah, internalizing all that pressure. She also observes the other girls. Many weren't prostitutes before, but they adapted fast when they saw the money.
She notes, everyone I met in Brunei had a price, and Robin met it without fail. Finds the girls from normal lives were the quickest to lap up the new lifestyle. Feels embarrassed for them.
It boils down to feeling like a well-paid piece of property. She describes cutting off the connection between her soul and body, says she could barely feel my own skin anymore.
So the luxury, the wealth, combined with being treated like an object and watched constantly, it leads to this profound kind of detachment, loss of self. Not a dream life at all, more like a gilded cage that corrodes you from the inside.
So even within that gilded cage, things start to shift for her. Her view of it changes. She talks about her interactions with Prince Robin, how he'd just appear or disappear from parties, usually vanished around midnight.
Her first actual physical encounter with him, she notes his looks, his smell, but also the surprising feeling of boredom.
She gets to sit in the coveted chair of the second favorite girlfriend next to him for a while. That has status.
But it doesn't last.
No. As time goes on, he pays less attention. Just enough attention to let me know he still liked me, but not enough to put my ass back in the chair. Ouch.
The source mentions him going on the Hajj to Mecca, too. Makes her wonder what he actually believed. What did he pray for? Did he believe in anything?
Her own status slides down from spoiled to punished to common. She feels like she landed at the bottom of the chute. Sees another girl, Leanne, have this huge public meltdown over Robin.
And Robin's reaction.
He enjoyed it, likes seeing a little bit of real pain. Jill watches this and thinks about her own past relationships, vows she won't become that girl.
Smart move. She also gets these little trips outside the palace, right?
Yeah.
But they kind of highlight how trapped she still is.
Yeah, like a shopping trip in Singapore, calls it a silver sci-fi utopia. Sales girls like a bucket brigade. She feels like she's coming up in the world with new stuff, but it's all about constructing an image.
And a trip to Kuala Lumpur. Helicopter ride, sees the city from above but doesn't actually get to walk around. Stays in a luxury suite watching CNN.
Sees news about the Gulf War, Mandela, apartheid. Realizes the connection between the oil money funding her life and these huge world events, but can't talk to Robin about it.
She even meets the Sultan, Martin, she calls him. Huge suite. He's gracious, easier to talk to than Robin.
Yeah.
Has a dream later about being glad she's a man, understanding why someone would buy a girl.
Whoa. Heavy dream.
Hmm.
All these things lead her to realize that freedom to buy wasn't the same thing as freedom. Thinking about marrying Robin means losing all independence.
And the surveillance, the house arrest periods when they couldn't leave certain areas, it just reinforces that lack of real freedom. She mentions a mirror falling slightly, revealing the red camera light. Not news they were watched, but still made her feel crazy paranoid.
Okay, so it's during one of these house arrest times, stuck inside, nothing to do, that something really changes. She'd brought her laptop, not French tapes this time.
Ah, the laptop.
Yeah. Decides to try journaling on it. And it becomes everything. Her salvation. She says she lost myself in it, just banged out page after page. Starts emailing her friend Colin back home. Gives her something to look forward to.
This is huge, right? The writing changes everything.
Totally. She starts recording conversations, details, observations, and that gave me a reason to look hard at the world. Suddenly, she's not bored. She has a reason to be in Brunei that's not about her messed up self-image or the prince or his money.
It's like the act of observing, of writing, of starting to tell her own story. That's how she starts to save herself. Finding meaning by becoming the narrator, not just a character in someone else's weird play. It's that search for the story that saves her life, but now she's actively creating it.
So her first time leaving Brunei, she gets gifts, Tiffany, money. But the jewelry doesn't shock her anymore. She says she'd have been crestfallen if she hadn't gotten something outrageous. And she gets 2 tickets, one home, one to come back.
Robin does this fake surprise thing. You will stay, of course.
Yeah, she feels completely torn, elated, and I felt sick, like winning and I was sinking at the same time.
But she does go back.
She does. 3 weeks later, sees this surge in the American population of the harem, witnesses what she calls the first snow flurry of the avalanche that would later hit. Prince Jefri mentions someone blabbing to tabloids, topless photos. Feels like things are getting unstable.
And leaving Brunei for good this time. That experience stays with her, feeling like there's a camera behind every mirror and a king around every corner. That paranoia, that feeling of being watched, lingers.
So jump ahead again, back in New York, and the contrast is just brutal. From palace luxury to the shared hovel apartment. Miniature closet, peeling paint, scavenged desk, crate shelves, hippie tapestries.
Dusty.
And the shock of unpacking. Designer clothes, she says, over $100,000 in jewelry into a shoebox in the closet, wondering if rats like shiny things. It's such a stark image of these two clashing worlds she's trying to reconcile.
Her parents have changed too. They just accept vague answers about Brunei, seem relieved not to talk about it. So she tries to build this new life back in NY, navigates relationships, meets Andy. During that WTC elevator incident, she found his geeky Bruckner answer somehow reassuring, like meeting him meant she'd averted disaster.
She really forces her way into his life, becomes a regular installation at the studio, deals with the drama with his partner Tom, sees the pattern, everyone loving Andy and hating each other.
Finds real love with a real boyfriend, with Andy. Thinks about Robin, but crucially, doesn't miss him. and makes that choice. The second Brunei ticket comes, she throws it away, walks forward into my new life as if the old one had never existed.
Tries to have a normal life with Andy. Tiny apartment, easy bake kitchen. He pays rent. Her mom sends food. It's this fantasy. Artie hookery artist and a genius computer hacker enjoying quiet nights at home.
But the reality isn't the fantasy. Andy's never home. Workaholic.
She tries to justify it, saying she needed her space. But she envies him because he just had to be Andy. Thinks exceptional people get that pass. The rest of us have to work harder. If I were just me, just Jill, I'd be nowhere.
Oof. Still struggling with that self-worth thing, right? Yeah. Echoes the dad stuff. The Brunei feeling of having a price. Still feels she needs to perform to be valued.
The breakup with Andy is rough. She realizes the idea of Andy, the life she pictured, was already gone before Mark showed up. Didn't see it was over. Leaves him unkindly. Sees his pain. He just sat on the couch and held his head. Realizes how disconnected they'd become, how absent she'd been too.
And then there's this really disturbing encounter with Mark, Andy's friend, who had this past relationship with Andy when Andy was just 12.
Mark shows up at her place drunk, lost his job, says, "Do you know what you do to me?" She's terrified, looks for a weapon, yells at him to leave. Just awful.
All these complicated, messy relationships, Brunei, family, Andy, Mark. She later uses this spider web analogy. Feeling attached to everything I ever loved, everything I thought I walked away from clean. You just don't escape the past easily.
And the memoir keeps throwing curveballs. Trying to build this new life, she gets pregnant, unexpectedly, with Andy.
They weren't using protection, but she didn't think she could get pregnant. History of starvation, irregular periods.
Negative tests at first, but she just knew. Finally, a positive blood test. She's almost 3 months pregnant.
And Andy's reaction.
Strangely unfazed. Just tells her, if you want to have a baby, you'll be doing it alone.
Wow. Cold. So the decision falls entirely on her.
Yeah. And she has this history of being pro-choice. Marches, clinic defense, my body, my choice. A baby at 19 felt unthinkable. Not the future she imagined for herself. Unlike girls she pictured in urban projects and Midwestern trailers. A bit classist maybe, but that's her thinking.
So she decides alone, sits in an office alone. The source describes the abortion itself, the IV sting, the sleepy warmth of twilight sleep. And during it, this powerful dream of her father.
Hearing his voice, you don't see a vein, you feel a vein. Remembers him finding her vein once in the hospital. Strange how he surfaces there.
Haunting. And the aftermath sounds brutal. And he cries for a second in the elevator, then drops her off, goes back to work, brings ice cream later, moves the TV. But the pain she felt.
Not cramps, like something was clawing its way out of me. Stays in bed for 2 weeks watching TV. Feels this pit, a crater, a black hole. Wants to explode the self I couldn't quite find. Calls it her own Big Bang.
Clearly a massive trauma. Leaves her feeling completely shattered, lost, wanting to just obliterate herself and start over. Therapy later helps her connect guilt over it to her feelings about her adoption.
And it's after this, in this broken place, that another piece of her story clicks into place. Her brother Johnny calls. He has her birth mother's name, Carrie.
Finds her through an investigator. Carrie writes, sends pictures of her adopted family, describes herself as restless, confused, hopes Jill had a good life.
Jill notes the contrast, Carrie's practical kitchen notepad letters versus her own dramatic flair.
She writes back, asks these searching questions. Did you plant your garden? Did you ever wind up getting the kite with 2 strings up in the air? Longing for connection.
Eventually calls her to visit NY, has friends there for support, frames it with Patti Smith again. Need to look the truth in the eye and never once would you blink. The meeting at the airport is awkward, tense. Carrie sheds one tear. Says Jill has her birth father's eyes.
And she finally hears about him, Jim.
Yeah. Very good looking, very charismatic. Their struggles in Chicago, a fight. He left before Jill was born. And Jill has this moment. It was the story I had been waiting to hear all my life. But it also feels unrelated, makes her blanch. Can't relax around Carrie. Worried she'll find some indictment of my character in her mother's story.
Complicated. Carrie seems comfortable with Jill's world, though. Theater hipsters and art queens.
Yeah. They go to the Met, meet Carrie's friend, a Rockette, who says the Rockettes is where ballerinas go to die.
Oof. That hits Jill hard, right? Connects back to her own dance classes.
Totally. Remember steps dancers being vicious, crying in the stairwell, feeling too fat, too slow, too lazy. That old self-criticism rushes back. Could have been so much better if I just tried harder.
Wow. So finding her origins loops right back to those deep-seated feelings of inadequacy, that constant striving she's had since she was a kid. The past just keeps weaving into the present.
Okay, so with all this going on, searching for authenticity, dealing with trauma, confronting her past, something else becomes really important to her. Tattoos.
She sees Tattoo Time magazine, feels this instant camaraderie with the people in it, sees herself in them. Like maybe she's a pirate, a sailor, a prostitute, a gangster, a sideshow attraction, but nobody knew it.
And this leads to a big realization. She needs a deeper level of authenticity, or she'll just keep being a shapeshifter, will do whatever for the rest of her life.
So tattooing becomes more than just ink.
Way more. A radical statement about permanence and impermanence, her scarlet letter, but worn proudly, hopes it can actually change her. Like the ultimate tattoo is the one that changes the jackass into a zebra.
And her first one, she describes it vividly.
Yeah, a big tattoo, a life-changing tattoo.
Yeah.
A purple snake spine turning into flowers down her thigh and decorating her entire pussy with thorny monster teeth.
Whoa, that's graphic and incredibly personal.
It feels like the ultimate act of claiming her body, her story, making it permanent on her skin after feeling so temporary, so owned by others, like finally embodying her truth.
Seems like a real turning point, physically manifesting that integration she's been searching for.
The memoir covers a long stretch. Says 17 years passed since the start of all this. She mentions leaving New York eventually, moving to San Francisco. Describes leaving NY like leaving a lover. Leave New York and it leaves you behind so quickly.
And she briefly notes what happened to Prince Jefri, Robin's brother, the one whose troubles she saw beginning.
Yeah, the source mentions accusations of embezzling billions, assets seized, a warrant out. She follows it from afar, his world crashing down while hers keeps evolving. Quite the contrast.
And the epilogue brings it back around to Patti Smith again.
Yes. She's listening to Patti Smith 15 years later in her San Francisco apartment, on bed rest after IVF. Doubting it worked, but sure they'd have a child who would break our hearts wide open, who would help us to grow in compassion.
And thinking about Patti Smith's voice.
Calls it unshakable. Here's her saying, I have the answer now. What would Patti Smith do? She would sing to me. She would forgive me for losing myself.
Wow. Full circle. Back to Scheherazade almost.
Yeah.
Telling the story, singing her truth, even just to herself first. That's survival. That's finding yourself again after being lost. Forgiving yourself.
Absolutely. So this deep dive, it's taken us through this wild, sometimes really uncomfortable, but totally human story. One woman's search for who she is, how to survive, from suburbs to palaces, through trauma and love and loss.
Finding a way to be authentic through writing, through literally marking her story on herself.
It really shows how unpredictable life is, right? The gap between how things look and how they feel, how the past sticks with you, and the power of facing the hard stuff, owning your narrative, all the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we end where the source began, with that Scheherazade question. This protagonist went through hell and back, basically, seeking validation, finding truth, finally telling and embodying her story. So the question for you listening is, what does it mean for you to find the story that saves your life?